गूगल पर जैसे ही विमेन सेफ्टी इन इंडिया लिखो तो फर्स्ट फ्यू सजेशंस आते हैं विमेन सेफ्टी इन इंडिया ऐसे। जितना यूज टू ये गूगल सर्च बच्चों के ऐसे कंपटीशन से हो चुका है, उतना ही यूज टू भारत का हर नागरिक इस विमेन सेफ्टी के टॉपिक से हो चुका है। शायद ही अब कोई रिस्पॉन्स किसी के मन में आता है और आए दिन हेडलाइन बस बदलती रहती है ना? So what else is new? What else happened that was new in the week where we celebrated Women's Day? Today, we're jumping headfirst into the bottomless pit of absurdity that is women's safety in India. Let's kick off with a story that's as baffling as it is horrifying. A foreign tourist, brave enough to venture into the heart of India, faced a nightmare in the form of a gang rape ordeal in Jharkhand. But fear not, because according to some armchair critics, the real crime here is setting up camp in a forest. Because as we all know, the biggest danger in the wilderness isn't wild animals, but rather wild, horny men. Now let's take a stroll down memory lane, shall we? Oh look, it's our favorite headlines from the past decade. Israeli tourist raped in Himachal, Japanese tourist in Kolkata, tourists in Goa, tourists in Manali. It's like a twisted game of Where's Waldo, except instead of a bespectacled man in a striped shirt, it's innocent victims of sexual violence scattered across the country's tourist hotspots. Do you also smell what I do? That is what we call desensitization. Because of course, nothing says progress like being numb to the rampant sexual violence plaguing our nation's most visited destinations. Because let's face it, it's not just about tourists. It's only when somebody is a tourist that we see some new outcry happening. Because of course, it's about India's image outside of India. But whatever is happening with women inside India, well, we're just desensitized to that, aren't we? But fear not, because our government is here to save the day. Just kidding. They're too busy brushing allegations of sexual misconduct under the rug and releasing rapists back into society. Over the years, the government has taken a lot of steps to help ensure women's safety. Of course, those have mostly included setting up funds, centers, different police forces, helpline numbers. Not much about in education or educating the men or actually telling men how to behave like humans. That is just some other topic for some other day or generation or eternity year, whatever. But there are steps that have been taken. One of those is something that I want to talk about, and that is the one-stop centers that had to be set up in. Because why hold rapists accountable when you can just slap them on the wrist and send them back into the wild? You must remember when India's leading women wrestlers took to the streets to protest against sexual misconduct by Wrestling Federation of India's president and BJP MP, Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh. Oh, and let's not forget the government's stellar response, sweeping these allegations under the rug and discrediting the wrestlers. Because why hold powerful men accountable when you can just blame the victims? The Sakhi One Stop Center scheme, a shining beacon of hope in the fight against violence. Or so we thought. Every district in the country should have an operational OSC to provide integrated support and assistance to women affected by violence and facilitate immediate emergency and non-emergency access to a range of services such as legal, medical, temporary shelter, police assistance, psychological counseling, a lot of support. Presently, 733 OSCs are operational in 729 districts of the country. This is data that was provided in the Lok Sabha on February 10th, 2023. Turns out less than half of the funds allocated for these centers were actually used. While over 735 crore of the 868 approved funds have already been released to the districts, only 328 crore has been utilized on the ground. But hey, who needs actual solutions when you can just let the money collect dust in a bank account? And let's not forget the dedicated staff of these centers working tirelessly to support survivors of violence. Except, of course, when they're not getting paid properly or when the centers are operating in isolation due to funding segregation. The total salary for the staff of 13 people who are supposed to work at these centers is 2 lakh per month. This was revised to around 2.35 lakh per month in the new Mission Shakti guidelines for 2023. And let's not forget the dedicated staff of these centers working tirelessly to support survivors of violence. However, that's only when they're not busy, like, understanding, figuring out where to get paid properly, or when the centers are just operating in isolation due to funding segregation and they don't have all the resources to actually include, as mentioned above. The total salary of the staff of 13 in one center is 2 lakh per month. And this was revised very graciously to 2.35 lakh per month in the new Mission Shakti guidelines of 2023. According to an investigation by India Spend, this literally means a salary of around 15,000 per month for every worker. Most OSCs have to pay a salary in addition to this that they're getting from the government just to sustain workers and ensure the paucity of enough amount of help and support available to women when they reach out to these centers. Oh, and did I mention the delightful state of OSC construction across the country? Because apparently building these centers is about as efficient as herding cats. The Madras High Court was recently informed that the central government has approved 38 one-stop centers in the state of Tamil Nadu, of which only 8 have finally reached the stage of pending construction. One-stop centers are intended to support women of violence in private and public spaces within families, communities, and at the workplace. It's just fascinating how selective some individuals can be when it comes to championing women's rights. The same voices that clamor for women's autonomy and agency suddenly fall silent when faced with issues like these, fundamental issues like these that are actually beyond the superficial. Take, for example, the debate surrounding the hijab. Suddenly, everyone became an expert on women's rights, fervently arguing for the freedom of choice and expression. Actually, we were not really arguing for choice, were we? Yet, when confronted with the harsh realities of systemic misogyny, sexual violence, and institutionalized discrimination, these voices fade into the background. One-stop centers is just one of those schemes and methods that the government has tried to implement that I analyzed. Imagine what would be the ground reality for so many others. It seems that for some, women's rights only matter when they can be weaponized to further their own agendas or ideologies. The plight of women facing violence, oppression, and inequality in their daily lives is conveniently ignored in favor of the shallow debates over dress codes and cultural symbols. It's as if these individuals are more concerned with virtue signaling or scoring political points than actually addressing the root causes of gender-based discrimination. Now, talking to mostly the women out there, it's crucial for women to be aware of their legal rights and protections. Let's break down some key rights every woman should know about. You probably know about this, or maybe some are things that you don't know about, but sometimes you're caught in situations and you just wonder, what are my rights? Can I actually do something about it? For example, Section 354D of the IPC. Under Section 354D of the Indian Penal Code, women have the right to take legal action against offenders who engage in stalking or harassment, whether online or offline. It's a powerful tool to combat unwanted advances and protect personal boundaries. Free legal services. If you're a woman who has faced harm, you have the right to access free legal services under the Legal Services Authorities Act of 1987. Whether you can afford representation or not, legal services are available at the district, state and federal levels to provide support and guidance. ये अगला वाला काफी इम्पोर्टेंट है. कई बार आप कभी रात में बाहर हो, किसी के साथ हो, कुछ भी रीजन से पुलिस वाले या पुलिस वाले जैसे दिखने वाले लोग आपको हरास करने आ जाते हैं. कहते हैं कि चलिए थाने चलिए. This is protection from detention. Women cannot be detained between dusk and sunrise until exceptional circumstances are there that are authorized by a first-class magistrate. Furthermore, questioning by the police must occur in the presence of a female constable or with the woman's family or friends. Right to anonymity. To protect privacy and anonymity, victims of sexual assault or harassment have the right to give anonymous statements under Section 228A of the Indian Penal Code. This ensures their safety while seeking justice. Self-defense rights. Lastly, women have the right to defend themselves from imminent harm, including severe harm or death. This defense applies in situations where there is a serious real risk of injury or worse, providing crucial protection in life-threatening situations. Knowing and understanding these rights is essential for every woman. Stay informed, stay empowered. Remember, knowledge is power.